This is a place where science drifts softly into story, and where curiosity can accompany you as you prepare to rest. Tonight we're exploring something familiar yet quietly profound: the psychology of weather and how the skies above shape the thoughts, moods, and memories within. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching from. It's always fascinating to see how far these calm explorations travel. Perhaps you're listening with rain tapping at your window, or maybe beneath the brightness of a desert sky. If you feel inclined, let me know in the comments below. If this gentle journey helps you relax, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. For those of you already subscribed, thank you. Your support means that these calm stories can continue, and if you'd like to be sure you never miss the next upload, kindly click the notification bell so that each new exploration arrives softly at your bedside. I do hope the video carries you gently towards sleep. Of course, there's always the chance it may become a little too interesting and keep you awake. But if that happens, at least you'll drift off a little wiser than before, so let us begin. What hidden connections exist between the weather we feel on our skin and the weather we feel in our minds? Weather is often treated as... Good evening, and welcome to the Sleepy Scientist. This is a place where science drifts softly into story, and where curiosity can accompany you as you prepare to rest. Tonight we're exploring something familiar yet quietly profound: the psychology of weather and how the skies above shape the thoughts, moods, and memories within. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching from. It's always fascinating to see how far these calm explorations travel. Perhaps you're listening with rain tapping at your window, or maybe beneath the brightness of a desert sky. If you feel inclined, let me know in the comments below. If this gentle journey helps you relax, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. For those of you already subscribed, thank you. Your support means that these calm stories can continue, and if you'd like to be sure you never miss the next upload, kindly click the notification bell so that each new exploration arrives softly at your bedside. I do hope the video carries you gently towards sleep. Of course, there's always the chance it may become a little too interesting and keep you awake. But if that happens, at least you'll drift off a little wiser than before, so let us begin. What hidden connections exist between the weather we feel on our skin and the weather we feel in our minds? Weather is often treated as background noise in daily life, the small talk filler, the thing we glance at on a forecast app before choosing a jacket. But beneath that simplicity lies a powerful psychological current. Sunshine, storms, drizzle, and snow do more than paint the sky. They leave their imprint on memory, shape our choices, and colour our emotions. The psychology of weather sits at the crossroads of biology and imagination. On one hand, there are measurable effects: how sunlight shifts brain chemistry, how rain lowers arousal levels, how heat and cold alter concentration and decision-making. On the other, there is the human habit of weaving meaning into skies, the poetry of storms, the melancholy of grey afternoons, the renewal of spring. Science and story blur here, as they so often do, forming a picture that is both chemical and cultural. In this video we'll move slowly through these layers. We'll explore why bright days energize, why raindrops soothe, why storms stir the heart, and how entire nations form temperaments around climate. We'll step into the quiet psychology of sleep and creativity, of memory and mood, all held within shifting skies. And throughout, we'll keep our pace gentle, like the slow unfolding of clouds. The aim isn't to rush toward answers, but to rest in wonder. The sky has been humanity's first canvas and first clock, the silent rhythm to which life has always moved. Tonight, it becomes a mirror for the mind. So let us wander into this space between atmosphere and thought, where raindrops meet memory, where sunlight blends with serotonin, and where the restless winds of the weather find echoes in the winds of human feeling. Sunlight has always been more than just a source of warmth and light. For the human brain, it is a kind of invisible conductor, guiding rhythms, moods, and even the way thoughts unfold. When the sun rises, your body is not simply reacting to brightness on the horizon. Deep inside, chemical messengers begin to shift and align, creating a cascade of effects that ripple through your entire day. One of the most important players here is serotonin, sometimes called the feel-good neurotransmitter. When light enters your eyes, special receptors in the retina send signals to areas of the brain that regulate serotonin production. Higher levels of this chemical are linked to a sense of calm, stability, and well-being. It is part of the reason a bright morning feels like an invitation to move, to smile, or to take on tasks that seemed heavy in the gloom of night. Sunlight also nudges dopamine, a neurotransmitter tied to motivation and reward. Together, these two chemicals form a kind of internal weather system, helping you feel balanced, optimistic, and engaged with the world. But sunlight does more than simply lift mood in the moment. It also resets your circadian rhythm, the roughly 24-hour cycle that governs sleep and wakefulness. Morning light signals to the brain that it is time to be alert, raising body temperature and slowing the release of melatonin, the hormone that makes you feel drowsy. This daily tuning keeps your internal clock aligned with the external world. Without it, sleep becomes erratic, energy dips unpredictably, and concentration starts to drift. In this way, sunlight quietly acts as your body's metronome, keeping time not with ticks or chimes, but with photons arriving from 93 million miles away. Then there is the matter of vitamin D, often called the sunshine vitamin. When ultraviolet rays strike the skin, they trigger the production of this crucial nutrient, which supports bone health, immune function, and muscle strength. But vitamin D also appears to influence mood, with deficiencies linked to feelings of fatigue and low spirits. Studies have found that people who spend more time outdoors in natural light often report higher energy and resilience. It is as if sunlight feeds both body and mind in tandem, creating a holistic sense of vitality. Of course, bright days carry with them a psychological weight that extends beyond biology. Across cultures, sunshine has long been associated with joy, celebration, and productivity. Festivals around solstices and harvests often honor the sun as a life-giver. In literature and art, golden light streams through scenes of triumph, clarity, and love. A clear day is painted as hopeful, a stormy one as troubled. These symbolic associations reinforce the real chemical shifts happening within us, making sunshine both a physical stimulant and a cultural emblem of optimism. It is perhaps no surprise, then, that when sunlight breaks through after long stretches of grey, people respond almost instinctively. In northern climates especially, the first warm days of spring trigger a near-comical migration. Parks fill instantly, every patch of grass becomes a picnic ground, and sun-starved faces tilt upwards as though greeting an old friend. This collective stampede to outdoor spaces is not simply about leisure. It is a deep communal craving for light after scarcity, a psychological hunger being satisfied in real time. Yet it is worth remembering that sunlight, like many good things, follows a curve. Too much of it can become draining, even harmful. Long days of relentless brightness can cause fatigue rather than energy, overstimulating the system. Heat and glare combine to create exhaustion, headaches, and irritability. On a more serious level, prolonged exposure to ultraviolet rays increases the risk of skin damage. The brain too can become unsettled when rhythms are stretched unnaturally, such as during very long summer days in polar regions, where sleep can become fragmented despite the abundance of light. This dual nature, sunlight as both healer and stressor, is part of its fascination. It shows that balance is everything. A gentle morning glow is invigorating, but endless blazing heat may fray patience. A bright afternoon uplifts, but the calm of dusk is needed to restore equilibrium. Sunlight, then, is not a one-dimensional force but a shifting companion, guiding mood in ways both subtle and profound. There is also the way sunlight seems to frame human memory. Many recollections of joy, childhood games, travels, moments of love, are bathed in descriptions of golden light or clear skies. Sunshine becomes a backdrop against which happiness feels heightened. Psychologists suggest this may not be accidental. Our brains may encode positive experiences more vividly when serotonin is high, binding the memory to the conditions of the day. Thus, when we recall those moments, the mental image of sunshine is inseparable from the feeling itself. Even in modern life, where artificial light can banish darkness at the flick of a switch, the pull of the sun remains undeniable. Offices design windows to maximize natural light, schools schedule recess outdoors, and hospitals incorporate sunny spaces to support recovery. Architects and city planners understand that light does more than illuminate. It heals, motivates, and inspires. And while technology can mimic brightness, few things compare to the subtle warmth of the sun on skin or the way shadows lengthen as it arcs across the sky. The psychology of sunshine is therefore layered. On one level, it is a chemical boost, regulating neurotransmitters, hormones and vitamins. On another, it is cultural, shaping traditions, symbols, and collective behaviour. And on a third, it is personal, tied to memory and imagination. Taken together, these layers explain why a clear morning feels like possibility itself, and why the first sunny day after winter sparks such joy. Sunlight is not simply the backdrop to life, but an active participant in it. It shapes the way we wake, the way we feel, and the way we remember. It creates bonds across societies and laughter in crowded parks. It is both ancient and immediate, distant and intimate, a star's energy translated into human thought. And while its brightness cannot last forever, its influence endures, flickering quietly in the chemistry of the brain long after the sun has dipped below the horizon. Rain has always carried with it a sense of rhythm. Each drop that falls creates a tiny note, and when countless drops gather, they form a soft percussion that seems to quiet the mind. The psychology of rain sounds is surprisingly well studied. Humans find them calming not only because of their gentle volume, but because they are both rhythmic and unpredictable in just the right balance. Rain produces what researchers call pink noise, a sound pattern that has a natural even spread of frequencies. Unlike the harshness of alarms or machinery, pink noise lulls the brain, masking sudden disruptions and helping it to slip into a relaxed state. It explains why many people drift off faster with rain recordings playing beside their bed, and why a storm outside can sometimes feel like the perfect sleeping companion. Rain's soundscape also taps into something deeply evolutionary. For early humans, the sound of steady rainfall would have signaled safety. If rain was falling in that gentle way, there were no predators approaching through dry grass and no urgent fires to flee. The subconscious registered rain as a protective curtain, a shield between the outside world and the warmth of the shelter. That sense of safety lingers today, so when rain patters against windows, modern minds react with the same quieting instinct. Yet rain is not only heard, it is smelled. Petrichor, the earthy scent that rises when raindrops hit dry soil, is one of the most evocative aromas known to the brain. It comes from plant oils and a compound called geosmin, released from soil-dwelling microbes. Humans are astonishingly sensitive to this scent, able to detect geosmin at concentrations as low as a few parts per trillion. That sensitivity likely evolved to help ancient peoples sense fresh water sources, but today it plays a different role. It anchors memory. Many people can recall childhood summers, gardens, or long walks the instant that first scent of rain hits the air. The smell is less about what the nose detects and more about what the mind retrieves. Petrichor has the power to open a hidden drawer of memory, blending comfort with nostalgia in a way few other scents can achieve. Because of these sensory qualities, rain often becomes a backdrop for reflection. Grey skies and steady drops encourage inward thinking, slowing down the frenetic pace of daily life. There is a reason so many journals, poems and artworks have been born on rainy days. The weather outside seems to grant permission for stillness inside. Unlike the command of bright sunshine to be active, rain offers the excuse to pause, look inward, and explore ideas that might otherwise be drowned out by busyness. This reflective mood does not always lean toward joy. Rain has long been tied to melancholy, to a soft sadness that carries with it its own kind of beauty. Writers have used rain as a symbol of longing or loss for centuries, while painters often use its muted palette to evoke subtle moods. Songs across cultures lean on rainfall as a metaphor for tears, time passing, or cleansing renewal. Rain allows both comfort and sorrow to coexist, making it a uniquely versatile emotional companion. Music in particular has embraced the psychology of rain. From jazz standards to pop ballads, the imagery of raindrops, storms, and grey days carries deep resonance. Composers often mimic the sound of rainfall in their work, creating patterns that soothe while stirring emotion. Listening to a melody built on the rhythm of raindrops can transport the mind into that half-dream state, where thought and memory mingle. Rain has inspired lullabies as much as laments, proving its power to shape human feeling across genres and generations. There is also a cultural element in how rain is perceived. In some regions, it is seen as a blessing, a life-bringer for crops and rivers. In others, it is viewed as dreary or inconvenient. These cultural lenses shape the psychology of rain, teaching people to greet it either with joy or reluctance. Yet even in societies where it is grumbled at, there is still a universal recognition of rain's soothing sound and evocative smell. Few can resist the simple comfort of being indoors while rain taps steadily on the roof. One of rain's most practical psychological effects is its ability to aid sleep. The consistency of rainfall masks sudden environmental noises, the car passing by, the creak of a house settling, the occasional bark of a dog. By smoothing out these interruptions, rain creates an auditory blanket that allows the brain to remain undisturbed in its descent into rest. Studies have shown that pink noise, including rain sounds, can even improve memory consolidation during sleep, helping the brain process and retain information. So that half-conscious drowsiness that comes with a rainy night may actually be sharpening the mind for tomorrow. Of course, rain also alters behaviour in subtler ways. It encourages nesting, gathering indoors and sharing warm meals. It draws people closer together, creating intimacy against the backdrop of grey skies. In cities, umbrellas bloom like flowers on sidewalks, turning the shared experience of rain into a kind of unspoken choreography. This collective rhythm contributes to rain's power to shape mood not only individually but socially. Rain's place in the human imagination is therefore complex. It is soothing yet sad, inspiring yet heavy, familiar yet always changing. A drizzle can invite a gentle walk of thought, while a downpour can stir awe or even exhilaration. The smell of petrichor carries memories, the sound carries calm, and the sight of falling water carries symbols too numerous to count. No two rainfalls are ever the same, and perhaps that is why the human mind never tires of its presence. What is clear is that rain does not simply fall outside the window. It falls inward too, shaping thought, memory and emotion. Its sounds act as lullabies, its scents as time machines, and its imagery as muses for centuries of art and song. It allows for quiet reflection and grants permission for rest. For some, it even opens the door to sleep more deeply and dream more vividly. In all these ways, rain is more than weather. It is atmosphere for the soul. Storms arrive with a drama that few natural events can match. The air thickens, the sky darkens, and then comes the first low rumble of thunder rolling across the horizon. A flash of lightning cuts through the clouds, brilliant and sudden, followed by another booming report. In those moments, it is hard not to feel something deep and primal stirring within. Storms seem to bypass ordinary thought and strike directly at the nervous system, commanding both awe and unease in equal measure. Part of this reaction is biological. Thunder and lightning are not just spectacles, they are triggers. The brain evolved to pay attention to sudden, loud, or bright stimuli, because such things often signal danger. Lightning can split trees, ignite fires, or strike the unwary, while thunder shakes the very air with its force. When these cues appear, the body's fight-or-flight system is activated. Adrenaline floods the bloodstream, sharpening senses, quickening heartbeat, and preparing muscles for action. Even when safe indoors, the storm outside can set off this cascade, which is why many feel restless, anxious, or oddly exhilarated during a tempest. The evolutionary roots of storm anxiety are easy to imagine. For early humans without sturdy shelters, a thunderstorm was not merely inconvenient but potentially life-threatening. A sudden deluge could flood a camp, lightning could destroy food sources or ignite grasslands, and powerful winds could topple makeshift structures. Those who paid attention to the cues of storms and sought shelter quickly were more likely to survive. This ancient vigilance lingers in modern minds, even though glass windows and solid roofs now protect against most immediate dangers. Yet storms do not trigger the same reaction in everyone. For some, they inspire fear. Children often cover their ears at the crack of thunder, while adults may feel a creeping unease as winds rise. Storm phobia, sometimes called astrophobia, is fairly common, rooted in both the unpredictability and sheer power of these events. People who live in regions where storms bring real risks, from tornadoes to floods, often develop a heightened wariness, treating each rumble as a potential threat. The unpredictability of storms, their sudden bursts of violence, feeds the anxious mind with endless possibilities. For others, however, storms are captivating. Storm chasers quite literally pursue them, driving long distances to witness the grandeur of towering clouds and electrical displays. Even those who remain safely indoors often find themselves drawn to watch lightning strikes illuminate the sky. The thrill of storms may come from the very adrenaline they spark. Instead of interpreting the rush as fear, some minds translate it as excitement. The same chemicals that prepare one person to cower under blankets propel another to run outside with a camera. In this way, storms act like emotional Rorschach tests, revealing the subtle differences in how individuals experience awe and danger. Beyond individual responses, storms carry a rich symbolic weight. They have long been used as metaphors for inner turmoil, intensity, and eventual release. In literature, a thunderstorm often mirrors a character's conflict or signals a turning point. In psychology, storms represent catharsis, a build-up of tension followed by dramatic discharge. Just as the sky cannot hold back its energy forever, so too the mind seeks release from pent-up stress or emotion. The crashing of thunder can feel like the world itself expressing what words cannot. There is also renewal in storms. After the violence subsides, the air is clearer, cooler, and fresher. Rain nourishes the soil, lightning fixes nitrogen that enriches plants, and the atmosphere resets itself. Psychologically, storms embody the cycle of chaos and calm, reminding us that upheaval is often followed by clarity. Many people describe a sense of relief when a storm finally breaks after a sweltering day. The tension in the air dissipates, and with it, the unease that had built up. The storm is both disruption and cure. This dual nature explains why storms inspire such fascination in art and culture. Painters depict tempestuous seas, poets liken heartbreak to rolling thunder, and filmmakers use lightning to punctuate climactic moments. Storms demand attention, symbolizing power beyond human control. At the same time, they stir something elemental within, connecting personal emotions to vast natural forces. In standing before a storm, people glimpse their own smallness and yet feel strangely alive. On a lighter note, storms often bring out one of the oldest informal competitions, counting the seconds between lightning and thunder. With every bright flash, heads turn skyward, and then the countdown begins. 1, 2, 3, until the crash arrives. The old rule of thumb is that each second represents the storm being roughly a third of a mile away. Though imprecise, the practice turns fear into a kind of game, a ritual repeated around the world. For some, it becomes almost an Olympic event, complete with mock commentary and dramatic announcements of the score. It is perhaps humanity's way of taming the uncontrollable, transforming the storm's raw energy into a playful challenge. There is another layer of fascination, the sense of connection storms create. During a powerful thunderstorm, neighbors pause at their windows, families gather together in living rooms, and strangers may even share knowing glances beneath shared shelter. The experience is collective, uniting people under the same sky. It is difficult to ignore the reminder that no matter how advanced technology becomes, the forces of nature still hold sway. This shared vulnerability brings people closer, if only for the duration of the storm. Even after centuries of science, storms maintain their aura of mystery. Meteorology can explain how warm and cold fronts collide, how electrical charges build in clouds, and why thunder rolls across the land. But none of these explanations erase the raw psychological impact. The flash still startles, the boom still rattles, and the sense of being at the mercy of the skies still humbles. Storms reveal how little control humans truly have, and in that recognition lies both fear and wonder. Ultimately, storms remind us that chaos and beauty often come hand in hand. They unsettle routines, flood streets, and shake windows, yet they also cleanse the air, water the soil, and spark feelings that ordinary days rarely summon. They are teachers in intensity, showing that disruption can be as natural and necessary as calm. And though each storm eventually passes, the memory of standing in that charged air, heart racing as thunder cracked overhead, lingers in the mind, proof of the powerful dialogue between the sky's turmoil and the human psyche. Heat has a way of pressing down on everything it touches. Unlike the brisk clarity of cold or the gentle lift of sunshine, high temperatures seem to wrap the body and mind in a heavy blanket. Biologically, heat is stress. When the air grows hot, the body begins a constant balancing act to prevent overheating. Blood vessels dilate to release warmth, sweat glands switch into overdrive, and the heart works harder to circulate blood toward the skin. This effort uses energy that might otherwise go toward focus, patience, or creativity. It is little wonder that, on sweltering afternoons, even the simplest tasks can feel monumental. The psychological impact of heat goes beyond physical strain. Studies have shown that high temperatures can reduce attention span, impair memory, and slow reaction times. Heat makes it harder for the brain to maintain efficiency, as if the circuitry itself is running too hot. Offices without proper cooling often see productivity plummet, and schools in the midst of summer heat waves notice test scores dip. The explanation is not mysterious. When the body is spending so much effort staying cool, it has less energy left for thought. But perhaps the most famous link between heat and human behavior is irritability. There is a reason the phrase hot-tempered feels so fitting. Heat correlates with higher levels of aggression, with numerous studies showing increases in arguments, violence, and even crime during heat waves. The explanation is twofold. On a biological level, the discomfort of being overheated primes the nervous system for agitation. On a social level, hot weather pushes people into closer quarters. Crowded streets, packed trains, stifling rooms, where frustrations spark more easily. When patience runs thin, even small annoyances can feel amplified. Historical records support this pattern. Many riots, uprisings, and outbursts of unrest have taken place during intense summers. During the summer of 1967, for example, dozens of American cities experienced violent riots, many of them occurring in the midst of oppressive heat. Psychologists and historians alike have noted how soaring temperatures often act as a catalyst, turning existing tensions into open conflict. Heat does not create discontent out of nothing, but it can fan the flames, quite literally. Yet it would be unfair to describe summer heat as only destructive. Warmth is also associated with joy, freedom, and togetherness. The season invites people outdoors toward beaches, parks, and festivals. The psychological comfort of gentle warmth is profound. Moderate temperatures encourage relaxation of muscles, release of endorphins, and a general feeling of well-being. Sunshine and heat together create conditions where people feel more sociable, more optimistic, and more likely to seek connection. Childhood memories of long holidays, ice cream cones, and lazy afternoons are saturated with this softer side of heat. The paradox of summer lies in this balance. A warm day spent in leisure feels blissful, but a relentless stretch of scorching afternoons tips quickly into exhaustion. Heat waves in particular expose the limits of human tolerance. Sleep becomes restless as nights refuse to cool. Hydration becomes a constant battle, and concentration dwindles. Hospitals often see spikes in visits not only for heat-related illness, but also for stress and fatigue. The line between comfort and strain is thinner than many realize, reminding us that warmth is best enjoyed in moderation. Cultural differences in how societies cope with heat also reveal its psychological impact. In Mediterranean regions, the tradition of the siesta, a midday rest, developed partly as a response to high afternoon temperatures. By shifting productivity to the cooler hours of morning and evening, communities preserved both energy and tempers. In contrast, industrial societies that insist on fixed schedules often find themselves battling against the natural rhythm of the climate. Forcing focus at the hottest point of the day sets people against their own biology, which naturally seeks shade and stillness. Even modern research confirms that human performance follows this rhythm. Crime statistics, workplace efficiency reports, and even sporting outcomes all reveal patterns tied to temperature. Athletes tire faster, decision-makers show riskier judgment, and tempers shorten as thermometers climb. The impact is subtle in some cases and glaring in others, but the thread is consistent. Heat challenges the brain and body in ways cooler weather does not. This does not mean people are helpless before the sun. Psychological adaptation is possible. Simple rituals like cooling drinks, shaded rest, or social breaks in the heat have long softened its bite. Communities facing extreme climates often develop resilience through culture, embedding habits that prioritize survival while turning hardship into identity. But the universal truth remains. When temperatures soar, patience tends to wither, and the mind often longs for relief. Interestingly, research also suggests that heat influences generosity and social behavior. Some studies indicate that moderate warmth can increase helping behavior, perhaps because people feel more comfortable and open when their bodies are relaxed. The same warmth that encourages irritability in excess can, in balance, make people friendlier. Once again, it is a matter of degree. A gentle heat promotes kindness, while oppressive heat provokes conflict. This tension between comfort and strain mirrors heat's symbolic role in human thought. Warmth represents love, intimacy, and vitality, while burning heat represents anger, destruction, and fury. Fire itself embodies this duality, essential for survival, yet capable of devastation. Culturally, heat is celebrated in the joy of summer festivals, yet feared in the deserts and droughts that threaten survival. The human psyche has always walked a line between embracing heat and respecting its dangers. The future may make this relationship even more pressing. With climate change increasing the frequency and severity of heat waves, psychologists and sociologists are studying the long-term effects of extreme heat on mental health, community stability, and productivity. The patterns seen in history suggest that rising temperatures will bring not only physical risks, but also psychological ones. Stress, irritability, and conflict may become more frequent companions unless ways are found to adapt. Still, there is comfort in remembering that heat is not solely oppressive. On the right day, warmth is the glow of a shared meal outdoors, the freedom of a summer holiday, or the quiet joy of basking in sunlight. The psychology of heat is, at its core, a balancing act. It can soothe or it can strain, inspire generosity or ignite tempers. The same sun that coaxes flowers into bloom can also leave fields parched. For the human mind, heat is both invitation and challenge, joy and exhaustion. Its influence reminds us that even something as simple as temperature can shape not only the body's health, but the moods and movements of society itself. Cold has a way of sharpening the world. Step outside into a crisp winter morning, and the first breath stings the lungs, the skin prickles, and the mind suddenly feels more awake. This isn't just imagination. Cold stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, the same system that handles the body's fight or flight response. Blood vessels constrict, heart rate quickens, and adrenaline levels rise slightly. The effect is a boost of alertness, as if the brain has been shaken gently from its slumber. For this reason, many people find that a brisk walk in the cold clears their thoughts more effectively than any cup of coffee. Some studies even suggest that cooler environments can improve focus and mental performance, at least up to a point, because the body is less drained from the effort of cooling itself. But with the clarity that cold provides comes the equally strong human desire for coziness. Cold weather drives people inward, not just indoors, but inward into layers, huddles, and comforts. Blankets suddenly become more than fabric. They are protective cocoons. Warm drinks taste richer, their steam carrying psychological reassurance as much as physical heat. Fireplaces, candles, and glowing lamps take on symbolic weight, creating small sanctuaries against the chill. This instinct to gather warmth is not only practical but deeply social. Cold brings people together, encouraging physical closeness and shared rituals that would feel unnecessary in warmer seasons. Across the world, entire cultural traditions have formed around surviving cold climates. In Scandinavia, long winters inspired practices like hygge, a Danish word that describes the art of coziness and contentment. Hygge is about creating small havens of warmth, whether through soft lighting, shared meals, or quiet evenings under blankets. It is not just a way to pass the winter, but a deliberate psychological strategy, turning cold's challenge into an invitation for intimacy and gratitude. In other places, similar ideas appear under different names: kostlig in Norway, mais in Sweden, or even the British affection for tea and thick socks on a dreary day. These cultural frameworks teach people to embrace rather than resist the season, finding comfort in rituals that transform hardship into pleasure. Cold has also shaped traditions that extend beyond the home. Festivals of light, for instance, are common across cold regions. From Diwali in India to Hanukkah in Jewish tradition to Christmas markets in Europe, the theme of warmth and illumination against dark winters appears again and again. Bonfires, lanterns, and candles are not just aesthetic choices, they are psychological beacons, reminders that even in long nights, light and community endure. In Siberia, Inuit, and Arctic cultures, communal gatherings, storytelling, and feasts evolved to help people endure months of ice and darkness, reinforcing bonds and providing emotional resilience. Cold, in this sense, is not simply endured, but used as a stage for human creativity and solidarity. One of the most enchanting qualities of cold weather is snow, and part of its psychological effect lies in its silence. When snow falls thick on the ground, it dampens sound by absorbing and scattering vibrations. Footsteps become muffled, distant traffic fades, and the world seems hushed. Psychologists note that this quieting effect can lower stress and promote calm, as the brain is momentarily freed from the constant stimulation of noise. For many, walking in fresh snow feels like entering another dimension, one where the usual busyness of the world is softened into tranquility. Children may delight in play, but adults often notice the serenity, that rare moment when even cities seem to pause and breathe. Snow also carries a visual psychology. Its brightness reflects light, illuminating even the shortest days. The whiteness suggests purity, renewal, and blankness, which is why snow is often tied to new beginnings in literature and art. At the same time, its uniformity can feel comforting, as if the world has been smoothed out into a soft, quiet canvas. This visual and auditory stillness together explain why snow is often described as magical, and why it can trigger feelings of peace even in the most unlikely places. The human response to cold, however, is not universally positive. Long winters can lead to isolation, low mood, or fatigue, particularly when daylight is scarce. Seasonal affective disorder, for example, is more prevalent in high-latitude regions where the sun barely rises for months. But even here, cultures adapt. Light therapy, exercise, and shared traditions all emerge as tools to maintain psychological health. It demonstrates the flexibility of the mind to find balance even in difficult conditions, crafting comfort from necessity. Cold weather also alters daily behavior in subtle but important ways. People are more likely to cook hearty meals, favor warm baths, or linger longer in bed. Clothing becomes layered and practical, but also symbolic. The favorite sweater or winter scarf carrying emotional value far beyond its material warmth. These small choices accumulate into a season of habits, each one reinforcing the psychology of coziness. Far from being trivial, they act as anchors that sustain well-being when the outside world feels harsh. The paradox of cold is that while it heightens alertness, it simultaneously deepens the longing for rest and comfort. It sharpens the mind while drawing the body towards stillness. This push and pull gives winter its distinctive rhythm. Days may begin with bracing air that invigorates the senses, but they end with fireside warmth that soothes them. It is this rhythm that cultures have learned to lean into, allowing both clarity and coziness to coexist. In a modern world where central heating, insulated homes, and electric lights reduce the physical risks of cold, the psychological side remains deeply rooted. People still crave the rituals of warmth, whether that means gathering with friends, sipping cocoa, or watching snowfall from behind a window. Cold still organizes social life, shaping how and where people gather, how they dress, and how they mark the passage of seasons. Ultimately, cold weather reveals two truths about the human mind. First, that the body is finely tuned to environmental cues, responding with sharpened senses and altered states of focus. And second, that when faced with challenge, people instinctively seek comfort, and often find it in one another. Cold may sting the skin and quicken the breath, but it also sparks creativity in how we create warmth. From the soft hush of falling snow to the golden glow of a candle, winter becomes not just a season to survive, but a canvas for coziness, clarity, and calm. The year turns like a great wheel, carrying with it cycles of light and dark, warmth and cold, growth and retreat. These external changes are not just scenery, they leave deep impressions on the mind. Humans have always lived in dialogue with the seasons, shaping work, rituals, and emotions to the rhythm of the natural calendar. Even now, in a world of artificial light and climate control, the seasons still guide mood in ways both subtle and profound. One of the clearest examples of this influence is seasonal affective disorder, often shortened to SAD. It appears most strongly in winter, when days are shorter and sunlight scarce. The lack of light disrupts circadian rhythms, the body's internal clock that governs sleep and wakefulness, as well as hormone cycles. Melatonin, the hormone that encourages sleepiness, lingers longer into the morning, leaving people groggy. Meanwhile, serotonin, which helps regulate mood, may dip without enough sunlight to stimulate its production. The result can be lethargy, low mood, and a craving for heavy foods that provide fleeting comfort. Though often portrayed as simply the winter blues, seasonal affective disorder can feel heavy and persistent. Treatment often involves restoring what the season takes away. Light therapy, for example, provides exposure to bright artificial light in the morning, mimicking sunrise and nudging the circadian system back into alignment. Regular exercise and time outdoors, even on cloudy days, also help restore balance. In essence, the treatment is to give the mind what nature withholds: brightness, rhythm, and movement. This simple but effective approach underscores just how tightly the human mind is wired to cycles of light. But the relationship between seasons and psychology extends far beyond clinical conditions. Each season carries its own emotional character, shaping how people feel and act. Spring, with its lengthening days and warming air, brings a sense of renewal. Budding trees and blooming flowers act as visible symbols of possibility. Many report feeling more energetic and optimistic during spring, as if the world itself is offering a second chance. Anthropologists suggest that this surge of vitality once matched the agricultural cycle, when planting demanded energy and optimism. Even today, spring cleaning remains a tradition, as though households mirror the season's burst of growth by clearing away stagnation. Summer, with its long days, often carries a feeling of abundance. It is the season of festivals, holidays, and social gatherings. The abundance of light stretches time, creating an illusion of endless days. Yet summer's heat can also overwhelm, tipping joy into restlessness or fatigue. Autumn, by contrast, invites reflection. Leaves turn, days shorten, and a quiet sense of ending settles in. Autumn has long been associated with wisdom, harvest, and gratitude, a season to gather what has been grown, both literally and metaphorically. Many describe autumn as contemplative, a time when the pace of life naturally slows and attention turns inward. Winter, with its stillness and darkness, demands resilience but also offers a unique kind of coziness. Psychologically, it encourages hibernation, the desire for rest, intimacy, and quiet reflection. While it can bring challenges such as low mood, it also creates opportunities for deep connection, both with others and with oneself. The cycle of the seasons therefore maps neatly onto the cycle of human moods: renewal in spring, abundance in summer, reflection in autumn, and rest in winter. This pattern is so consistent across cultures that it has been woven into language, metaphor, and art for centuries. Celebrations tied to solstices and equinoxes highlight just how universal this rhythm is. The winter solstice, the darkest point of the year, has long been marked by festivals of light, from Yule to Christmas. These celebrations symbolize hope, the assurance that light will return. The summer solstice, by contrast, often carries themes of fertility, abundance, and vitality, as seen in midsummer festivals across Europe. The spring and autumn equinoxes, when day and night stand equal, are moments of balance, celebrated with planting festivals in spring and harvest feasts in autumn. These traditions are not arbitrary. They reflect a collective psychological need to mark the turning of the year, to make meaning out of nature's reliable but mysterious patterns. Modern life may appear detached from these cycles, with grocery stores stocking strawberries in December and offices running on fluorescent lights regardless of the hour. Yet the underlying need to acknowledge seasonal shifts persists. People decorate homes with seasonal colours, change wardrobes, and still mark holidays with rituals that echo ancient practices. Even when practical dependence on the seasons diminishes, emotional dependence remains. It is as though the mind insists on staying in step with the natural rhythm, whether or not survival demands it. The human tendency to find meaning in seasonal change may also stem from the need for narrative. Seasons provide structure, dividing the year into chapters that mirror the flow of life itself: beginnings, flourishing, decline, and renewal. In this sense, the cycle of seasons becomes a metaphor for human existence. Spring corresponds to youth, summer to adulthood, autumn to maturity, and winter to old age and rest. Cultures across the world have drawn upon this symbolism, embedding the seasons not only in festivals, but in philosophies and religions. The psychological comfort of this narrative is immense. To see the world moving in cycles is to see life as patterned, predictable, and meaningful. It suggests that decline is temporary, that after winter comes spring, that endings fold naturally into beginnings. This cyclical view of time softens the sharpness of change, turning it into part of a greater rhythm. What emerges from all this is the realization that seasons are not simply meteorological phenomena. They are psychological landscapes. They guide sleep and wakefulness, dictate energy and reflection, inspire art and ritual, and provide a framework through which people interpret their own lives. The external wheel of the year turns, and with it, the inner wheel of the mind. The two remain inseparable, a reminder that no matter how advanced technology becomes, human beings are still creatures of the earth, attuned to its light, its darkness, and its endless turning. Weather has an unusual ability to act as a key that unlocks memory. Long before you can consciously recall the details of an event, a certain kind of day can stir something within you. A blue sky of a very particular shade, or the smell of rain rising from warm pavement, can pull memories from the depths of the mind with astonishing clarity. Psychologists describe this as sensory anchoring, when environmental cues like temperature, light, or scent become tied to experiences so strongly that encountering them later revives the past. Smell is perhaps the most powerful anchor, and weather often brings its own unique sense. Petrichor, the earthy aroma that follows rain, is famous for sparking nostalgia. It can summon images of childhood summers, of running barefoot across wet grass, or of afternoons spent watching storms from a safe porch. The reason smell is so potent lies in the brain itself. The olfactory system is directly connected to the limbic system, which governs emotion and memory. Unlike sight or sound, which are processed in stages before reaching emotional centers, smell travels straight to the heart of memory. This is why a single whiff of damp air or sun-warmed pine can unearth experiences you haven't thought about in decades. Temperature, too, leaves deep imprints. The sharp cold of a frosty morning may recall walking to school bundled in layers, breath-forming clouds in the air. The heavy warmth of a humid evening might revive memories of family barbecues or long summer holidays. Heat and cold are not just sensations on the skin. They shape the activities, clothing, and rhythms of life, weaving themselves into the context of memory. Childhood winters are remembered not only for the holidays but for the feeling of coming inside with frozen fingers, thawing them against a mug of cocoa. Summers are remembered for the sticky heat of afternoons, the relief of shade, and the endless hours that seem to stretch forever. The sky itself plays a role in anchoring memory. There is something about the quality of light on a given day that imprints itself into recollection. The golden slant of a late afternoon sun may carry associations of youth and play, while the flat grey of a rainy morning may bring back quiet hours spent indoors with books or games. Even dramatic skies, the rolling build of storm clouds or the eerie stillness before thunder, can lodge themselves in memory, ready to resurface whenever the same conditions reappear. People often say, "This day feels exactly like," because weather provides the stage on which memory performs. Atmosphere in the broader sense, the combination of light, sound, temperature, and scent, is the invisible thread that stitches together nostalgia. A song may remind you of the past, but pair it with the smell of rain and the cool dimness of a cloudy sky, and the memory becomes immersive. Nostalgia is not just a recollection of facts, it is the recreation of mood. Weather supplies that mood effortlessly. It is why certain places seem haunted by memories, because the climate and conditions echo earlier experiences so strongly that the past feels present. This connection between weather and memory is especially vivid in childhood. Many of the earliest, most enduring memories are tied to the seasons. Ask someone about their childhood summers, and they may describe the feel of sprinklers on hot days, the sound of cicadas buzzing in the background, or the smell of sunscreen and salt water at the beach. Ask about winters, and they might recall snowball fights, the warmth of radiators, or the muffled quiet of a snowy night. Rainy days often surface as memories of games played indoors, of the steady tap of drops on windows while imaginations roamed free. These recollections endure not only because they were formative, but because the sensory details of weather etch them deeply into memory. Scientists studying autobiographical memory note that weather often acts as a retrieval cue. When people are asked to recall events, they sometimes begin by describing the weather. It was a sunny day when, or it rained all afternoon and we stayed inside. This suggests that weather forms part of the mental scaffolding of memory, giving structure and texture to the story of one's life. It also explains why encountering similar conditions later can bring back memories unbidden. A sudden downpour may remind you of a long-ago trip, or a crisp autumn breeze may revive the feeling of walking to a first day of school. Nostalgia itself carries psychological benefits. Though sometimes tinged with sadness, it often promotes a sense of continuity and comfort. By connecting present experience to past memories, nostalgia can strengthen identity and resilience. Weather plays a starring role in these moments, providing the sensory spark that bridges past and present. In a way, the climate becomes a companion, storing and releasing memories as the years pass. Cultural traditions also reflect this intertwining of weather and memory. Holidays often revolve around seasonal changes, and the weather of those times becomes inseparable from the rituals. The crispness of autumn air before harvest festivals, the chill of winter nights during celebrations of light, the long bright evenings of midsummer gatherings, all are remembered as much for their atmosphere as for the events themselves. These weather-linked memories become communal, shaping collective nostalgia as well as individual recollection. The strength of weather's link to memory may also explain why people sometimes feel disoriented when living in climates very different from those of their youth. A childhood spent with snowy winters may leave one feeling unmoored in tropical heat, while someone raised under endless sunshine may find grey, rainy months strangely oppressive. It is not just the environment that feels unfamiliar, but the absence of the sensory cues tied to foundational memories. Weather in this sense is part of the architecture of identity. Even as people grow older, the bond persists. A sudden scent of wet leaves can call back youthful walks home from school. A warm breeze on a spring evening may awaken memories of early romance. A thunderstorm might remind someone of childhood awe and fear. The mind does not let go of these anchors, because they are woven into the fabric of emotional life. Weather is not just a backdrop to memory, it is one of its strongest threads. When we think about why memories feel so vivid, the answer often lies in atmosphere. A photograph may capture a face or place, but it rarely captures the smell of rain, the warmth of the sun, or the hush of snow. Those are the elements that transport us, that make us feel we are living the moment again rather than simply remembering it. In this way, weather continues to travel with us. Carrying the echoes of past experiences into each new day, it shapes not only the present but the past, holding our histories in the shifting air. For as long as people have looked up at the sky, they have found inspiration waiting there. The weather, shifting from brightness to shadow, from calm to storm, has always acted as a canvas for imagination. Artists, writers, and musicians return to it endlessly, not just because it is visible and ever-present, but because it seems to mirror the inner states of the human mind. A clear morning can feel like a fresh page, while a darkened sky can set the stage for reflection, melancholy, or invention. Weather in this sense is both muse and metaphor, lending its moods to human creativity. Painters have long tried to capture the skies. Think of the swirling clouds of Van Gogh, the dramatic storms of Turner, or the delicate sunrises in Japanese woodblock prints. Each uses weather not as background scenery, but as a central figure in the story of the painting. A sky filled with light becomes a symbol of hope or divinity. A storm-tossed seascape evokes awe and the raw force of nature. By translating atmosphere into colour and brushstroke, artists invite viewers not only to see weather but to feel it, to experience the same emotion that the original scene inspired. Writers, too, turn instinctively to weather when shaping mood. It is rare to find a novel that does not at some point describe the day outside, for the state of the sky often acts as a shorthand for emotion. A rain-soaked street scene suggests sorrow or introspection, while golden light streaming through windows conveys comfort or joy. Entire genres lean heavily on weather. Gothic tales thrive on storms, romances linger on sunsets, and epics pause at dawn to signal renewal. These are not clichés so much as acknowledgements of a shared psychological language. Readers respond to weather in fiction because they respond to it in life, where a shift in the sky truly can transform the meaning of a moment. Music, too, is filled with weather. From Vivaldi's Four Seasons to jazz standards about rainy days, composers and songwriters reach for the atmosphere of the sky to express feelings too large or too subtle for words alone. Rain becomes rhythm, thunder becomes percussion, and sunshine becomes melody. Many songs about longing or loss invoke cloudy skies, while songs of freedom and joy call on clear horizons. The notes themselves seem to borrow from the cadence of weather, mimicking the rise and fall of wind or the steady beat of rainfall. One of the most intriguing aspects of weather and creativity is how different conditions inspire different kinds of work. Gloomy days often spark introspection. The subdued light and steady rain create an atmosphere of quiet that invites thought. Writers frequently report that they work best on overcast days, when the lack of distraction outside allows imagination to bloom inwardly. Rain muffles the world, creating the same sense of cocooning that blankets and lamplight do, and within that cocoon, ideas unfold. Sunshine, on the other hand, often inspires energy and outward creativity. Painters may find themselves drawn to capture bright landscapes, musicians to compose lively tunes, or performers to seek audiences outdoors. Sunshine encourages expression, while gloom encourages reflection. Two sides of the creative process that together form a balance. The psychological link between imagination and atmosphere may come down to mood regulation. Weather influences neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which in turn affect how flexible and inventive thinking becomes. Mildly sad or reflective moods, often induced by rainy days, have been shown to enhance attention to detail and creative problem-solving. Brighter moods, associated with sunny days, may encourage broader, more playful thinking. Neither is better. Rather, each provides a different lens through which creativity flows. The weather outside becomes the weather inside, shaping not only emotion but thought itself. Metaphors of weather in storytelling reveal just how deeply this link runs. People speak of a stormy relationship, a sunny disposition, or a clouded judgment. Language leans naturally on the sky to describe what is happening within. This suggests that weather and emotion share a common architecture in the mind, each providing a model for the other. Storms are not just atmospheric events, but symbols of inner conflict. Clear skies are not just meteorological, but emotional states. When imagination searches for ways to describe the intangible, it reaches instinctively for the tangible cycles of the weather. Even scientific studies hint at this connection. Researchers exploring the effect of environment on creativity find that ambient sounds, such as rainfall, can enhance divergent thinking, the kind needed to generate new ideas. Moderate noise levels, like the hum of a cafe or the patter of rain, provide just enough stimulation to push the brain into associative leaps without overwhelming focus. Too much silence can feel sterile, too much noise can feel chaotic. Rainfall sits in the middle, providing a background that frees the mind to wander without losing its way. Different cultures have embraced these effects in distinct ways. In Japan, the appreciation of seasonal weather is deeply tied to poetry, with haiku often reflecting fleeting natural phenomena like rain showers or blossoms carried by spring winds. In northern Europe, sagas and legends are filled with storm imagery, reflecting both the harshness of climate and its power to shape imagination. In the tropics, the monsoon season inspires festivals, music and art that celebrate rather than fear the rains. Creativity does not just emerge in spite of weather but because of it, shaped by the rhythms and moods of the local climate. Of course, not every creative burst arrives with gloomy clouds or golden sunlight. Sometimes the very unpredictability of weather is what sparks ideas. A sudden storm can jolt the senses, providing fresh perspective. A break in the clouds can feel like revelation. For centuries, artists and thinkers have taken long walks outdoors precisely because the changing sky stirs the mind in ways no static environment can. The air, the light, the sounds, all combine to create conditions in which imagination feels more alive. It is no accident that some of humanity's greatest works are infused with weather. Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony mimics the sounds of storms and countryside rain. Turner's paintings immortalize tempests at sea. Countless novels begin with phrases like, "It was a dark and stormy night," which, though often mocked, reflects the genuine belief that atmosphere sets the stage for story. Even modern films lean heavily on weather as a visual shorthand for emotion, with rain marking moments of transformation and sunlight closing scenes of resolution. Creativity and climate remain inseparable. What all this suggests is that imagination is not isolated in the mind. It is porous, open to the sky above. Weather provides moods, metaphors, and music for the inner life. It influences how people think, what they create, and how they express what cannot otherwise be said. A rainy afternoon might coax out a quiet sketch, while a dazzling sunrise might inspire a new beginning. The clouds and sun, the storms and breezes, all become collaborators in the human project of creativity. In the end, weather reminds us that creativity is not conjured from nothing. It is rooted in the world, in the feel of air on the skin, the sound of drops on glass, the glow of light through leaves. Imagination, like weather, is changeable, restless, and endlessly renewing. And just as skies shift from gloom to brilliance, so too does the creative mind, finding in the atmosphere around it the spark to shape beauty, meaning, and story. Sleep may feel like a simple nightly ritual, but it is in fact a finely tuned biological process, one that is surprisingly sensitive to the weather. The conditions of the room, the temperature of the air, and even the soundscape outside the window can determine how easily the body drifts into slumber and how well it stays there. For something as natural as sleep, it turns out that the sky and the atmosphere play an outsized role. Temperature is one of the most important factors in this equation. The human body follows a natural circadian rhythm in which core temperature drops slightly in the evening to signal that it is time to rest. This cooling helps melatonin, the sleep hormone, rise, making you feel drowsy. A cooler room environment supports this process, allowing the body to shed heat more effectively. Studies consistently show that people sleep best in spaces kept around 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. Too warm, and the body struggles to lower its internal thermostat. Too cold, and it may jolt awake trying to conserve heat. The sweet spot lies in that gentle coolness that feels inviting beneath blankets. This is why people often describe slipping into bed in a cool room as instantly relaxing. The body recognizes the signal and responds with readiness for sleep. Rain adds another layer of assistance. Its rhythmic patter provides one of the most natural forms of white noise. Unlike sharp or unpredictable sounds that jolt the brain, rain offers a steady, soothing backdrop. It masks disruptive noises like passing cars, barking dogs, or creaking houses, creating a sonic blanket that allows the mind to let go. Psychologists suggest that this predictability is what makes rain so effective. The brain can tune it out while still registering its calming pattern. The sound of a storm at night, especially when you are safe indoors, has an almost hypnotic quality, lulling the nervous system into a state of rest. For many, the sound of rain recordings has become a go-to sleep aid, evidence that the mind never lost its evolutionary comfort in rainfall. But if rain and coolness encourage sleep, heat can make it elusive. Anyone who has endured a summer heatwave knows the frustration of tossing and turning on sticky sheets, searching for relief. The problem is that when the air is too hot, the body cannot shed heat effectively, preventing the natural drop in core temperature needed for deep sleep. Sweating offers some relief, but also leads to restlessness, as dehydration and discomfort interfere with the night's cycles. REM sleep, the stage associated with dreaming and memory processing, is particularly sensitive to heat, meaning that hot nights often result in fragmented, shallow rest. Long summer days can disrupt sleep in another way. Extended daylight, especially in higher latitudes, can confuse the circadian rhythm. Exposure to bright evening light suppresses melatonin, delaying the body's sleep signals. This is why blackout curtains are more than a luxury in places where the sun lingers until midnight. They are a necessity for maintaining healthy sleep patterns. Even in temperate climates, the late sunsets of summer can subtly push bedtimes later, creating what some researchers call social jet lag, where natural rhythms clash with schedules. The result is fatigue, even when sleep duration seems adequate. Winter, by contrast, often carries a different psychology at bedtime. The long nights and early darkness may sometimes encourage too much rest, yet they also create conditions for profound coziness. There is a special kind of comfort in retreating to bed while the world outside lies frozen and still. The contrast between the cold air and the warmth of blankets intensifies the sense of safety. Many people find they sleep more deeply in winter, cocooned by layers of warmth while the outside world hushes under snow. The stillness of cold nights, when even sound seems muffled, adds to the impression of sanctuary. Psychologists describe this as sleep benefiting not only from biological cues, but also from a sense of emotional security, the feeling of being sheltered against the elements. Cultural habits reflect this seasonal influence. In colder regions, winter bedtime rituals often involve warm drinks, thick duvets, and firelight, all designed to emphasize the contrast between inner comfort and outer chill. These rituals are not merely indulgent, they provide psychological signals to the brain that rest is near. Warmth, light and routine combine with darkness outside to create a strong cue for winding down. In summer, by contrast, bedtime rituals might involve fans, cooling fabrics, or attempts to shut out lingering light. In both cases, people adapt their environments to align with the rhythms of the season, proving once again that sleep is never entirely separate from the weather. The connection between weather and sleep extends beyond simple comfort. It influences dreams too. Some studies suggest that thunderstorms and changes in air pressure may affect dream recall or intensity, though the mechanisms remain speculative. More broadly, the atmosphere of the night, the sound of rain, the hush of snow, the heat of summer air, often filters into the dream world. Many people recall dreams that mirror the conditions outside, as if the boundary between the weather and the mind dissolves while sleeping. At its heart, the psychology of sleep under different weather conditions reveals how finely tuned humans remain to the natural world. Despite artificial lights, climate control and digital distractions, the body still listens to the signals of temperature, light and sound. Cool air, gentle rain, dark nights, and cozy warmth continue to guide rest, just as they did for ancestors sleeping in caves or huts. The weather outside shapes the atmosphere inside, not only of homes but of minds, determining how easily the brain releases the day and drifts into dreams. The science of sleep often focuses on stages, cycles and hormones, but it is also a story of the environment. Rain can be lullaby, snow can be silence, heat can be obstacle, and cold can be comfort. The interplay of weather and rest shows how fragile and beautiful the balance of human life is. Sleep, the most private of experiences, is in fact connected to something vast and external, the shifting skies that cradle the earth. Each night, as the body settles into stillness, it is weather that whispers whether the journey will be smooth, restless, or profoundly deep. The weather does not simply determine what clothes we wear or whether we carry an umbrella. It also plays a surprisingly subtle role in the choices we make, from the risks we take to the things we buy. Sunshine, cloud, rain and gloom all exert psychological pressure on decision-making, nudging the mind toward optimism, caution, indulgence, or restraint. Though we like to imagine ourselves as rational beings guided by logic, the sky above has a quiet but persistent influence on the paths we choose. One of the best studied effects is known as the sunshine bias. On bright, sunny days, people tend to feel more optimistic and more willing to take risks. Sunshine boosts serotonin and dopamine, creating feelings of energy and confidence. The result is that decisions made under clear skies often lean toward boldness. Traders on Wall Street, for instance, have historically performed better and been more willing to buy stocks on sunny days compared to gloomy ones. Economists studying markets have noticed patterns where entire indexes move ever so slightly upward during stretches of fair weather, as though collective mood is buoyed by light. The effect may be subtle in scale, but in large systems even small shifts matter. Sunshine also makes consumers more open to spending. Shoppers browsing in bright conditions are more likely to make impulsive purchases, perhaps because their moods are already lifted. Outdoor dining thrives, vacations are booked, and even major life decisions, as from house hunting to starting a new project, are more likely to be approached with confidence. In everyday terms, it means that people are more prone to say yes when the sun is shining. The glow outside becomes a glow inside, and that glow makes possibilities look brighter than they might on a different day. Gloomy weather has the opposite effect, but not necessarily in a negative sense. Cloudy, rainy days encourage caution, detail-oriented thinking, and deeper focus. Without the distraction of blazing light or the pull of outdoor activities, people turn inward, often approaching tasks with greater care. Psychologists have found that on overcast days, students perform better on memory and problem-solving tests. The atmosphere seems to reduce mental wanderings, allowing the mind to stay tethered to the task at hand. A rainy day, far from being wasted, may in fact be the perfect time for meticulous work. This tendency extends into larger decisions as well. People may avoid risky investments, delay major purchases, or seek safer options when the sky is heavy with clouds. The brain, tuned to the subdued mood of the day, approaches choices with restraint. While sunshine fuels leaps of faith, gloom fuels careful planning. Both are valuable, depending on context. The weather quietly guides which mindset rises to the surface. The influence of weather on decision-making shows up in surprising corners of life. Elections, for example, have been found to correlate with conditions on polling day. Voter turnout is often higher when the weather is pleasant, particularly in regions where travel to polling stations is affected by rain or snow. Sunshine not only makes the journey easier, but may also encourage a more positive outlook, nudging some toward participation who might otherwise stay home. Some studies even suggest that candidates perceived as more optimistic fare slightly better when voting day dawns bright, as the public mood resonates with the weather. Markets too follow these rhythms. Beyond the sunshine effect on stock trading, businesses have long adjusted strategies to match consumer psychology under different skies. Supermarkets place comfort foods more prominently in winter and lighter fare in summer, knowing that appetites shift with the seasons. Real estate agents sometimes schedule showings on bright days, believing that buyers are more likely to fall in love with a property when it is bathed in golden light. In this way, weather acts as an invisible partner in commerce, shaping outcomes without being noticed. On a smaller scale, the decisions of daily life are coloured by weather almost constantly. A sunny morning might inspire someone to walk to work rather than drive, to wear brighter clothing, or to strike up a conversation with a stranger. A cold, drizzly afternoon might encourage staying in, cooking a hearty meal, or reading a book instead of going out. None of these are life-altering choices, yet over time they shape patterns of behaviour. The accumulation of weather-influenced decisions becomes part of the rhythm of life itself. It is tempting to think of this influence as irrational, as though the mind is being fooled by clouds and sunshine. But in reality, weather has always been a fundamental context for survival. Light, warmth, and storms dictated when to plant, when to travel, when to seek shelter. The brain evolved to respond to these cues with urgency, because paying attention to the sky was once a matter of life and death. Even today, with climate control and instant forecasts, that responsiveness remains embedded in the nervous system. Decisions still bend subtly toward the weather because, for most of human history, ignoring the skies was not an option. The fascinating part is that this effect is not uniform for everyone. Some people thrive on bright days, their creativity and energy blossoming in sunshine. Others feel overstimulated by heat and light, finding cloudy days more comforting and productive. Cultural background also shapes perception. Societies used to frequent rain may find it less gloomy than outsiders do, and desert dwellers may treat clouds as rare gifts rather than dreary interruptions. The psychology of weather and decision-making is therefore both universal and deeply personal. There is even humour in how predictably weather sways choices. Sales of ice cream spike on sunny days, as though nobody expected that frozen treats might melt in heat. Gyms are suddenly crowded in January, when cold and darkness push people toward resolutions, only for the crowds to thin as spring sunshine offers more enticing activities outdoors. Humans may believe they act freely, yet the sky often has the final say. Ultimately, weather's influence on decision-making is a reminder of how intertwined the human mind is with the environment. Sunshine makes risks seem attractive, gloom encourages precision, and seasonal rhythms shape the arc of daily choices. Though we may not consciously weigh the forecast when deciding to invest, to buy, or to act, the brain has already factored it in. The atmosphere around us becomes the atmosphere within us, guiding choices in ways that feel natural because they have always been there. The next time a decision feels particularly bold or unusually cautious, it may be worth glancing out the window. The answer might not lie only in logic or circumstance, but in the quiet suggestions of the sky. The sun, the clouds, and the rain are not merely weather. They are participants in human thought, invisible companions in the daily act of choosing. Weather is more than a backdrop to social life. It is often the silent organizer of it. The conditions of the sky decide when people gather, how they celebrate, and even how they bond with one another. From sunlit festivals to rainy day firesides, weather creates moods that ripple across communities, shaping not just what people do but how they remember it afterward. Sunshine, for example, is almost universally associated with collective joy. A bright, cloudless day acts as an invitation for people to step outdoors, filling parks, beaches, and streets with energy. Street festivals thrive under these conditions, as do weddings, concerts, and sporting events. The open sky seems to encourage open behaviour, drawing people into shared spaces where laughter and music carry easily. Psychologists point out that sunshine enhances serotonin levels, creating feelings of optimism and social warmth. But there is also something communal in the simple fact that everyone experiences the same pleasant conditions at once. A picnic is not just food in the grass. It is a celebration of the shared relief that today at least the weather has aligned with human plans. Rain, by contrast, turns gatherings inward. Instead of scattering into public spaces, people draw together in homes, cafes, or sheltered spots. The sound of rainfall against windows often creates a backdrop for intimacy, encouraging conversation, reading, or quiet companionship. Families gather around board games, friends huddle beneath umbrellas, and couples linger indoors with tea or coffee. Rainy days are often remembered not for what was missed outdoors, but for the moments of closeness they fostered indoors. The weather sets boundaries, and within those boundaries, people find connection. The pattern is so consistent that many cultures have built festivals and traditions around the rhythms of weather. Harvest celebrations take place in autumn, when the bounty of fields invites communities to come together. Spring festivals often mark renewal, tied to the return of warmth and longer days. Summer solstice gatherings, from bonfires in northern Europe to music festivals worldwide, celebrate the abundance of light. Even winter, with its darkness and cold, inspires social rituals, feasts, festivals of light, and communal storytelling, designed to keep spirits warm when the world outside is frozen. In every case, the sky's rhythm determines the rhythm of social life. Shared weather creates shared memories. When people recall an event, they often anchor it to the conditions of the day. That wedding was so beautiful, the sun never left the sky. Or, we got soaked walking home, and it was the best part of the evening. The weather becomes a character in the memory, shaping not just the setting but the feeling of the experience. A surprise rainstorm during a festival can become the story everyone retells, transforming inconvenience into collective nostalgia. Sunshine creates joy in the moment, while sudden changes create stories that last long after. There is also a curious truth that bad weather often creates stronger memories than good. While a pleasant day might be enjoyed, a stormy one is remembered. Struggling together against rain, wind, or snow creates a sense of camaraderie, binding people through shared challenge. Psychologists note that difficult experiences, when endured with others, often become more positive in hindsight, strengthening social bonds. Weather is particularly good at creating these situations, throwing unpredictability into the mix and forcing cooperation. An unexpected downpour that sends a crowd running for shelter may be frustrating in the moment, but years later, it is the moment that stands out. In urban environments, weather continues to influence how social life unfolds. Outdoor cafes bustle when the sun shines, but empty quickly when clouds gather. Parks fill with joggers and families on bright mornings, then fall quiet when drizzle sets in. This ebb and flow is not just about comfort. It reflects the deep psychological link between weather and human sociability. Sunshine signals opportunity, rain signals retreat, and cold signals intimacy. Each pattern creates a different flavour of togetherness. Interestingly, weather can also influence how strangers interact. On sunny days, people are more likely to smile at one another, strike up conversations, or engage in small acts of kindness. This has been observed in studies where strangers were more willing to help others on bright days compared to overcast ones. Rainy days, though quieter, can still encourage brief but meaningful connections. A shared umbrella at a bus stop, a knowing glance when both people are drenched. The shared experience of weather dissolves some of the boundaries between individuals, reminding them that the sky is a common inheritance. The psychology of shared weather is particularly evident in childhood memories. Many people recall summers spent outdoors with friends, days that seemed endless beneath the sun. Equally vivid are rainy afternoons spent indoors, where games or stories seemed amplified by the storm outside. These weather-shaped memories linger not just because of the activities themselves, but because of the atmosphere that wrapped around them. The weather framed the experience, turning ordinary events into something unforgettable. Even in modern times, where technology provides artificial climates and indoor entertainment, the social pull of weather remains strong. Outdoor concerts still hinge on forecasts, and winter holidays still gather people around warmth and light. Weather may no longer dictate survival for many, but it still dictates togetherness. It sets the mood, decides the stage, and provides the background music of daily human interaction. In the end, weather and social life are inseparable. Sunshine draws crowds, rain fosters intimacy, and storms create stories. Festivals rise and fall with the turning of the year, marking cycles of light and darkness, abundance and scarcity. Shared skies create shared memories, and shared memories create bonds. The weather may be unpredictable, but its ability to shape human connection remains constant, reminding us that every gathering is not just about the people present, but also about the atmosphere that holds them together. For most of human history, the weather was not just a backdrop to daily life, but a force so powerful, so unpredictable, that it could only be understood through the language of myth. When the sun rose after long nights, it was a gift from the heavens. When storms split the sky with thunder, it was a god's anger or warning. Rain was not merely precipitation, but a blessing from spirits, and droughts were punishments to be endured. Across cultures and centuries, rituals grew out of this relationship, a way to make sense of the uncontrollable skies and perhaps to feel some measure of influence over them. The sun, as the most obvious and essential source of life, inspired some of the earliest and most elaborate rituals. Ancient Egyptians worshipped Ra, the sun god, as the ruler of the skies and giver of order. Temples aligned with the sun's path, and daily prayers acknowledged its cycle as a divine rhythm. In Incan culture, the sun god Inti was central to agriculture and survival, with festivals such as Inti Raymi celebrating his power and petitioning for good harvests. These rituals were not only religious acts but psychological assurances. By honouring the sun, people could feel secure that life and growth would continue, even when clouds or long winters obscured its presence. Rain was equally crucial, and societies dependent on agriculture often developed elaborate ceremonies to call it down from the heavens. The Aztecs honoured Tlaloc, the rain god, offering gifts and sacrifices to secure fertile fields. In India, rituals associated with Indra, the god of rain and thunderstorms, were central to Vedic traditions. Even in smaller communities, dances, songs and offerings were performed to beckon rain, sometimes involving the entire village in a collective plea. The psychological function of these practices was as important as the practical one. In the face of famine or drought, ritual created a sense of agency, a belief that human voices could reach the skies and alter fate. Storms, with their fearsome displays of thunder and lightning, were often linked to deities of immense power. In Greek mythology, Zeus hurled thunderbolts from Mount Olympus, asserting dominance over gods and mortals alike. The Norse god Thor wielded his hammer Mjolnir to control thunder, a symbol of both destruction and protection. For cultures facing frequent storms, such figures embodied both fear and reassurance, terrifying in their strength, yet comforting as guardians when properly honoured. These storm gods reflected human psychology in raw form, unpredictable bursts of anger, immense strength, and the possibility of sudden change. To worship them was to acknowledge that the skies themselves had tempers, and that respect was the best defence. Weather gods were not confined to grand civilizations alone. In many indigenous traditions, spirits of wind, rain, or snow were invoked through chants, dances, or painted symbols. Among Native American tribes, rain dances were performed with rhythmic precision, each movement designed to invite the sky's blessing. In Siberian shamanic practices, rituals for storms or blizzards involved offerings and chants to appease spirits dwelling in the atmosphere. These practices reflected a deep psychological truth. By giving the unpredictable a face, a name, or a ritual, people could interact with it. The unknown became less overwhelming when it could be addressed directly. Weather, in these traditions, acted as a mirror for human psychology. The anger of storms resembled human rage, the generosity of rain mirrored kindness, and the steady cycle of the sun reflected order and stability. By projecting emotions onto the skies, cultures externalized their own inner experiences. A drought was not just a lack of water, it was disfavor, disappointment, or neglect from divine forces. A bountiful harvest after rain was seen as reward and grace. This way of thinking transformed impersonal natural events into narratives that made emotional sense. Rituals also served as coping mechanisms. When faced with uncertainty, whether the crops would grow, whether lightning would strike, whether floods would destroy, ritual provided comfort. Coming together to chant, sing, or dance reassured people that they were not helpless. Even if the rain did not come, the act of ritual strengthened bonds within the community, gave meaning to hardship and soothed anxiety. In this sense, rituals were as much about the human mind as they were about the weather. They created a framework of predictability in a world that often felt chaotic. Festivals tied to solstices and equinoxes also reveal this psychological need. The winter solstice, the darkest day of the year, was marked with fire rituals, feasts and songs promising the return of light. Celebrations in ancient Rome, Scandinavia, and beyond all carried the same theme: hope that the sun would not abandon the world. Summer solstices were equally important, celebrating abundance and fertility, ensuring that communities paused to give thanks at the height of light. These rituals reassured people that even the extremes of the year were part of a cycle, a rhythm that could be trusted. In modern times, the gods of thunder and sun may not command temples as they once did, but their echoes remain. Cultural traditions still honour the skies, whether through New Year fireworks, which mimic the drama of storms, or the lighting of candles at Christmas, which recalls ancient solstice fires. Rain dances are still performed in parts of the world, some as living traditions, others as cultural revivals. Even the habit of making a wish during a meteor shower or cursing the skies during a downpour reflects that ancient impulse to interact with weather as though it were listening. What these myths and rituals reveal is that weather was never just physical. It was woven into identity, belief, and emotional life. By turning the sun into a god, rain into a gift, or thunder into a warning, humans transformed fear into story. They created meaning where none was guaranteed and found psychological stability in the unpredictable. Even today, when forecasts can predict rainfall to the hour, the pull of ritual persists. People still cheer the first warm day of spring, still gather to watch storms roll in, still feel awe at a clear sunrise after weeks of cloud. In the end, weather in myth and ritual is less about controlling the skies than about controlling fear. By telling stories, offering prayers, or performing dances, people reassured themselves that they were part of the cosmic drama, not simply at its mercy. The skies may have seemed vast and indifferent, but through ritual they became personal, familiar, and responsive. The gods of weather were not only deities, they were reflections of the human heart, projections of longing, fear, gratitude, and hope cast upward into the changing heavens. Step back and look at the world as a patchwork of climates, and you begin to see that weather does more than shape landscapes. It shapes temperaments. Nations and cultures develop in dialogue with their skies, their winters and summers, their rains and droughts. Over time, these patterns of climate leave their mark not only on architecture and cuisine, but on the psychology of entire peoples. The collective mood of nations is, in many ways, the collective mood of their weather. Consider the north, where winters are long, nights stretch endlessly, and snow quiets the land for months at a time. Out of these conditions grew a culture of coziness, often captured by the Danish word hygge. The idea is not simply about candles and warm blankets, but about creating comfort and intimacy in the face of harshness. When darkness presses in, light becomes more precious. When cold keeps people indoors, social bonds become stronger as families and friends gather close to share meals, stories, and warmth. This cultural emphasis on coziness and togetherness is not a luxury. It is a psychological survival strategy, born from necessity and carried proudly as identity. Mediterranean cultures, by contrast, reflect their sun-soaked climates. With abundant light and long summers, life often flows outward into plazas, cafes, and seaside gatherings. Social openness thrives under blue skies, where evenings stretch into late-night conversations and meals are shared al fresco. The rhythm of the day adapts to the heat, with siestas in the afternoon and bustling activity at night when the air cools. The collective temperament here leans toward expressiveness, warmth, and conviviality. It is not that the sun makes people inherently friendlier, but that it creates conditions where sociability flourishes. When the sky invites you outdoors for most of the year, the culture naturally embraces interaction. In desert regions, resilience becomes the defining trait. Harsh heat, scarce water, and unpredictable conditions demand resourcefulness and endurance. Cultures shaped by the desert often value hospitality deeply, because survival in such climates historically depended on generosity to travellers and strangers. The collective psychology here emphasises strength, patience, and adaptability. Resilience is woven into the social fabric, a reflection of the ability to endure conditions that seem unyielding. Stories, songs, and rituals often focus on perseverance, celebrating the ability to thrive where the land offers little. Shared national identities often root themselves in these climatic realities. Ask a Scandinavian about winter, and you may hear both complaints and pride. A sense of belonging forged in the ability to endure months of cold and darkness with grace. Ask someone from Greece, Italy, or Spain, and the sun will likely be described as both a joy and a rhythm setter, dictating meal times, leisure, and even the pace of speech. In desert societies, resilience in the face of heat and scarcity becomes a badge of honor. These shared experiences create not just habits, but values, the invisible threads that hold communities together. The influence of climate on temperament is not rigid, of course. People adapt in countless ways, and globalization blends cultures across climates. But broad patterns remain striking. Researchers have even studied correlations between climate and personality traits, finding that warmer, sunnier environments often foster extroversion and openness, while colder, harsher climates tend to foster conscientiousness and restraint. These are generalizations, not absolutes, but they hint at the subtle ways weather molds psychology on a grand scale. The collective mood shaped by weather also builds resilience in unique forms. In the north, resilience comes through rituals of light, candles in windows, festivals of fire, and communal gatherings that break the monotony of long winters. In Mediterranean climates, resilience comes through adaptation to heat, midday rests, late-night activity, and architecture designed to stay cool. In deserts, resilience is found in conserving resources, valuing shade and water, and developing technologies and traditions that make survival possible. Each climate creates not only challenges but solutions, and in solving them, cultures create identities. What is fascinating is how much pride is often tied to these adaptations. The harshness of winter becomes something to celebrate in Nordic festivals. The abundance of summer becomes central to Mediterranean feasts. The endurance of desert life becomes a point of cultural strength. Weather, in this sense, is not only endured but embraced, woven into the stories people tell about themselves. Nations define themselves not just by borders and governments, but by skies and seasons. Shared weather also creates shared memory. A generation that endured a series of harsh winters or devastating heat waves carries those experiences as part of its identity, influencing art, politics, and social behavior. Even on a smaller scale, the way neighbors talk about that summer when it never rained, or that winter when the snow never seemed to stop, reveals how climate events become collective milestones. These memories are not only about the weather itself, but about how people came together, coped, and endured. There is also a lesson in how different climates foster different types of psychological resilience. In colder regions, resilience often means finding joy in small comforts and making peace with solitude. In sunnier regions, it means embracing sociability and flexibility, adjusting schedules and expectations to match the day's heat. In arid climates, resilience means planning ahead, conserving resources, and relying on community bonds. Each strategy reflects the human ability to not just survive but thrive in the face of the sky's demands. In the modern era, with technology offering shelter from many extremes, one might imagine these influences fading. Air conditioning, heating, and artificial lighting blur the lines between climates. Yet cultural habits remain stubbornly weather-shaped. Northern Europe still leans on candles and cozy gatherings. The Mediterranean still celebrates long meals under open skies. Desert cultures still carry traditions of hospitality and endurance. Climate may no longer dictate survival as directly, but it continues to dictate meaning. The collective mood of nations reminds us that humans are not separate from their environments. Skies, temperatures, and seasons seep into behavior, shaping everything from daily routines to cultural philosophies. In this sense, weather is not merely climate, it is character. It gives people a common story, a shared rhythm, and a set of values forged by the conditions of the earth itself. Perhaps this is why travellers so often remark not only on the sights of a country, but on how it feels. The brightness of Spain, the coziness of Denmark, the resilience of Morocco. These are not accidents, but reflections of the weather that has, for centuries, shaped how people live and who they believe themselves to be. The skies above do not just determine the day's forecast, they help determine the spirit of nations. Throughout history, the sky has been more than a backdrop. It has been a canvas for human emotion. Painters, poets, and storytellers have all turned to weather as a way of expressing feelings too large or too subtle to capture otherwise. A single sky can hold sadness, joy, longing, or peace, and artists have always known how to translate those shifting moods into image and word. Weather in art and literature is not simply descriptive. It is symbolic, shaping imagination as much as it reflects it. In painting, skies often dictate the emotional temperature of a scene. Think of the fiery sunsets of J.M.W. Turner, where light itself becomes a swirling storm of colour, capturing both beauty and chaos. Or Van Gogh's Starry Night, in which the sky moves with restless energy, reflecting an inner turbulence that words could hardly capture. Even in classical landscapes, the choice of weather, a calm dawn, a threatening storm, or a cloudless afternoon, sets the tone for the entire work. The figures in the painting may stand still, but the sky above them tells the real story, filling the canvas with atmosphere that guides the viewer's mood. Poetry has long leaned on weather to mirror human feeling. Rain falls in verses of sorrow and longing, thunder rumbles with anger or change, and sunshine bursts through as a symbol of hope. Shakespeare, for example, often used storms to foreshadow turmoil, both in nature and in the hearts of his characters. Romantic poets like Wordsworth and Shelley treated skies and winds as companions to thought, merging landscape and feeling into one. In Japanese haiku, fleeting weather phenomena like blossoms carried by spring breezes or sudden summer showers capture transience and beauty in just a few words. Weather provides poets with a universal language. Everyone has felt a chill wind or basked in sunlight, so the metaphors resonate across cultures and centuries. Storms are perhaps the most dramatic of these metaphors. When an author describes a storm raging outside, readers know instinctively that conflict brews within the story. Thunder and lightning symbolize anger, chaos, or transformation. In novels, storms often accompany moments of climax or revelation, their intensity echoing the emotions of the characters. In paintings, stormy seas or dark clouds rolling over hills convey struggle, turmoil, and the raw force of nature mirrored in human life. The storm is not just a weather event, it is an emotional shorthand for upheaval. Sunshine, on the other hand, often represents clarity, peace, and renewal. A story that begins with storm clouds but ends with sunlight suggests resolution and hope. Artists use golden light to symbolize harmony or divine presence, bathing landscapes in warmth that feels almost spiritual. In literature, a ray of sunshine has become a common metaphor for relief or joy, a bright contrast to gloom. The psychological link is clear. When sunlight breaks through after darkness, it reassures both body and mind. Artists translate that reassurance into imagery, creating a sense of closure and comfort that audiences immediately understand. Weather also colours the human imagination in subtler ways. A grey day inspires reflection, an overcast sky encourages introspection, and a bright morning sparks energy. These moods carry over into creative expression, shaping not only the content but the tone of artistic works. For example, Impressionist painters often worked outdoors, capturing the play of light and weather in fleeting brushstrokes. Their works are not just images of landscapes, but impressions of atmosphere, moments where the air itself seems to shimmer on the canvas. Similarly, writers across cultures use weather as atmosphere in the literal sense, not just the condition of the sky, but the emotional space of the scene. Music, too, is steeped in weather. Composers have mimicked rain through repeating notes, thunder through booming percussion, and wind through sweeping strings. Vivaldi's Four Seasons remains one of the most famous examples, each movement designed to capture the mood of spring breezes, summer storms, autumn harvests, and winter chills. More modern songs echo this tradition: rainy day ballads, summer anthems, and storm-filled symphonies. Weather gives music its rhythm and metaphor, translating sky into sound. Cultural traditions also reveal how weather has inspired collective creativity. Myths of storm gods like Zeus or Thor found their way into art, literature, and performance, blending fear and reverence. Festivals tied to solstices and equinoxes often feature creative expressions, dances, songs, or visual art that embody the transition of the seasons. These works are more than celebrations of nature. They are ways of giving emotional shape to experiences that every member of the community shares. Weather provides a common stage for imagination to play upon. Even in modern times, with weather forecasts at our fingertips, the symbolic power of skies has not diminished. Filmmakers still use rain to heighten emotional scenes, sunshine to mark resolution, and storms to create drama. Advertisements rely on bright, sunny imagery to sell optimism or cloudy greys to evoke seriousness. Novelists still open stories with lines about the weather, not because they lack imagination, but because weather remains one of the most immediate ways to set tone. The sky continues to provide the shorthand for emotion, even in a world saturated with artificial light and climate control. There is also an interplay between weather and memory in art. A painting of a snowy field might remind someone of their own childhood winters, while a poem about summer heat might revive memories of endless afternoons. Artists tap into these shared sensory experiences, using weather to make their work feel universal. By invoking the atmosphere of a season or storm, they bridge personal imagination with collective understanding. What emerges from all this is a recognition that weather is not simply scenery. It is a collaborator in human creativity, lending its moods and metaphors to works of art across centuries. A single raindrop can symbolize sorrow or renewal. A single ray of sun can symbolize joy or grace. Storms can shake the canvas, and breezes can stir the page. Weather fills the human imagination with imagery that is both familiar and endlessly adaptable. In the end, weather in art and literature is proof of how deeply atmosphere shapes the inner world. The sky above becomes a mirror for the sky within. Artists look upward and find not only clouds or light, but emotions, stories, and meaning. Poets hear thunder and translate it into passion. Painters watch the sunrise and translate it into hope. The weather may be fleeting, but its impressions endure, captured in canvases, verses, and symphonies that remind us that the human mind has always found its truest metaphors in the changing sky. When people look at the sky, they often see more than clouds or sunlight. They see reflections of themselves. Human language is filled with phrases that use weather as shorthand for mood. A cloudy day to describe sadness, a stormy mood for anger, or a bright outlook for optimism. These expressions are not random. They reveal a deep psychological bond between the inner climate of the mind and the outer climate of the sky. For as long as there have been skies overhead, people have projected their feelings onto them, finding in shifting weather the perfect mirror for shifting emotions. This tendency begins with the simple fact that both weather and mood are changeable. Just as the sky shifts from calm to chaos, so too does the mind. Clouds gather slowly, storms break suddenly, and sunshine returns when least expected. The same could be said of joy, sorrow, or frustration. In weather, people find a natural metaphor for the unpredictability of their own hearts. When someone says they are feeling grey, they are not speaking literally, but the metaphor resonates because everyone knows what it feels like to stand under a dull sky and feel energy drain away. Emotional projection onto the sky also stems from the shared physicality of weather and mood. Rain dampens, heat stifles, cold sharpens, and wind unsettles. Sensations that align neatly with emotional experiences. Grief can feel heavy like humidity, while anger can feel sharp and electric like lightning. The overlap between bodily sensation and weather creates a bridge for metaphor. To say that someone has a sunny personality is to suggest that their presence feels warm and energizing, just as sunshine lifts spirits. These comparisons are intuitive because the brain experiences both weather and emotion in embodied ways. Language is full of such parallels. When people describe someone as storming out, it implies both emotional turbulence and the visual of dark clouds gathering. To be under the weather is to admit to illness or fatigue, a phrase that quietly acknowledges how moods and health often feel influenced by the sky. Even a ray of sunshine suggests not only brightness, but also relief, the way light piercing through clouds can change an entire landscape. These turns of phrase may sound casual, but they reflect a collective psychology that has long recognized the weather as an emotional companion. Gentle humor often arises in these connections. People joke about being partly cloudy with a chance of grumpiness, or about needing a forecast before approaching a moody friend. The humor works because the comparison feels natural. Moods, like skies, are expected to fluctuate. There is comfort in admitting that a bad day is just a passing storm system, nothing permanent. The forecast, after all, always changes. The psychological bond between inner and outer climate is more than metaphor. It can be measured. Studies show that weather genuinely influences mood, with bright days linked to optimism and gloomy days linked to introspection or sadness. But the influence is not one way. People also shape their perception of weather according to their mood. Someone already feeling low may see a grey sky as oppressive, while someone content may see it as peaceful. In this way, the sky becomes a screen onto which the mind projects its state, interpreting the same clouds through very different lenses. This interplay is evident in art and literature, where skies often stand in for emotional landscapes. A love scene bathed in sunlight feels different from one set under thunderclouds. A solitary figure in a painting looks lonelier when surrounded by fog. These artistic choices reflect the natural human habit of blending inner and outer weather. The imagination treats the sky as an extension of the self, capable of expressing what words cannot. What is striking is how universal this bond is. Across cultures and languages, weather metaphors for emotion appear again and again. In English, people speak of stormy relationships. In Japanese, melancholy is sometimes described as the sadness of rain. In Arabic poetry, desert winds are invoked to represent longing or loneliness. The expressions differ in detail but share the same core idea. The weather and the self are not separate but entwined. The humour of phrases like "under the weather" hides truths that are more serious. Illness, fatigue, or sadness often feel like being weighed down by a climate you cannot escape. Conversely, recovery feels like a clearing sky, a chance to breathe again. People instinctively describe their inner lives through weather because weather provides a language of cycles. A storm does not last forever. Clouds eventually part. Even the longest night ends in sunrise. These metaphors offer comfort, framing human struggles as temporary conditions rather than permanent states. In everyday life, people continue to use weather to explain themselves. Someone might say, "I woke up with sunshine in my head," or "It's been a foggy week." These expressions communicate complex moods quickly, painting emotional pictures that others can understand immediately. After all, everyone has stood in fog, everyone has waited out storm, everyone has basked in sunlight. Weather provides a universal emotional vocabulary, one that transcends age, culture, and experience. The bond between weather and the self also speaks to the human desire to find connection with the wider world. By seeing inner states reflected in the sky, people feel less isolated, as though the universe itself participates in their emotions. A storm outside aligns with turmoil within. A calm evening sky aligns with peace. It is not just metaphor, but a way of feeling that the self is part of something larger. The outer climate validates the inner one, offering reassurance that emotions are natural, cyclical, and shared. Ultimately, weather as a mirror of the self highlights the inseparability of mind and environment. The same sky that waters fields and drives winds also shapes imagination and language. People look upward not only to forecast the weather but to understand themselves. They find in clouds, rain, and sunlight a reflection of their own shifting moods, and in doing so they soften the mystery of emotion. It is easy to smile at the playful exaggerations of weather metaphors, to chuckle at the idea of someone being a human thunderstorm or a walking sunny day. Yet beneath the humour lies a deep truth. The sky and the psyche have always been in conversation. Weather gives people a language for their feelings, reminding them that emotions, like climates, are temporary but meaningful. The forecast of the self, just like the forecast outside, is always subject to change, and that, in its own way, is a comforting thought. The weather has always shaped the human mind, but never has the relationship felt as uncertain as it does today. For centuries, skies shifted in familiar rhythms, winters of cold, summers of warmth, rains that fed crops, and storms that came and went. Now, with climate change altering those patterns, psychology is entering new territory. The sky remains a constant presence overhead, yet it carries new meanings, new anxieties, and new challenges. Humanity faces not only rising seas and shifting seasons, but also the psychological weight of watching the very atmosphere change. One of the clearest effects is the rise of climate anxiety. For many, the weather is no longer simply something to plan the day around, but a reminder of planetary instability. Heat waves, floods, and wildfires become not just news items, but emotional triggers, sparking feelings of helplessness and dread. This anxiety is not confined to environmental activists. Surveys show that people of all ages report growing worry about the future of the climate. For younger generations, who expect to live through the centuries' unfolding changes, the worry often takes the form of eco-grief, mourning not only what has already been lost, such as glaciers or forests, but what may vanish in the future. Unlike storms that pass, this grief feels ongoing, a shadow cast by an uncertain forecast. Yet even within this unease lies a powerful psychological pattern: adaptation. Humans have always adjusted to changing skies. Ice ages came and went, deserts spread and shrank, monsoons shifted, and through it all societies endured by reshaping their ways of living. In colder periods, people built sturdier shelters and wove thicker fabrics. In hotter periods, they adjusted diets, schedules, and traditions. Today, the adaptation may take the form of new technologies, cooling systems, renewable energy, and smarter urban designs. But the psychological resilience behind these efforts remains the same. The mind seeks stability and instability, inventing rituals, routines, and solutions to face the weather's new reality. Resilience also appears in the way communities respond to shared challenges. Natural disasters often spark cooperation, neighbours helping neighbours when the skies turn dangerous. After floods or hurricanes, people frequently describe how the event, though devastating, also brought a sense of unity. This response reveals a core truth: the weather, even in its most destructive forms, has the power to bind people together. Climate change may test that bond on a larger scale, demanding not just local resilience but global solidarity. The psychology of weather will increasingly involve not only personal adaptation, but collective identity, a recognition that humanity shares one sky and one fate beneath it. The changing climate also reshapes imagination. Artists, writers, and musicians now grapple with skies that carry both beauty and warning. Sunsets painted red by wildfire smoke, or winters that arrive too late, inspire new forms of expression. Just as past generations used storms and sunshine as metaphors for inner life, today's creators use shifting weather as symbols of fragility and urgency. The psychological bond with the sky has always included projection, but now the projections include fear of loss and hope for renewal on a planetary scale. At the same time, it is important to remember that the sky itself retains an eternal quality. Clouds will still drift, storms will still roll, and the stars will still appear after dusk. The atmosphere is changing, yes, but it remains the same vast canvas that has inspired awe for millennia. Part of coping with climate anxiety may lie in recognizing this continuity. While patterns shift, the presence of the sky remains, offering a reminder that humanity is part of a story much larger than any single generation. This duality, the eternal sky and the changing climate, defines the modern psychological relationship with weather. It is both comfort and challenge, permanence and impermanence entwined. Humour, too, will always find a place in this dialogue. People may joke about melting in the heat during record summers, or about building an ark in torrential rains. The lightness of humour helps soften the weight of worry, turning anxiety into something shareable. Even in serious times, humour is a form of resilience, allowing people to acknowledge fear without being crushed by it. The weather has always invited jokes, from counting seconds between thunder and lightning to complaining about forecasts that seem permanently wrong, and that tradition continues even as the stakes rise. What lies ahead is a more conscious awareness of the psychological bond between humans and weather. No longer taken for granted, the sky becomes something to watch closely, not just for tomorrow's forecast, but for long-term shifts. This awareness may bring unease, but it also deepens appreciation. A cool breeze on a hot day, a sudden rain shower after weeks of dryness, a snowfall that quiets the world. These become moments to cherish more deeply when they are seen as fragile. In this way, climate change does not only bring fear, it brings sharper gratitude for the ordinary gifts of weather. Ultimately, the future psychology of weather will be shaped by the same qualities that have always defined humanity: adaptability, creativity, and the search for meaning. Climate change may alter traditions, test resilience, and stir anxiety, but it will not erase the bond between mind and sky. People will continue to describe themselves in weather's language, to paint storms and sunsets, to gather in festivals tied to the turning of the year. The sky will remain both mirror and muse, eternal yet ever-changing. As humanity looks upward in the decades to come, it will see not only clouds and light, but also a reflection of its own choices. The atmosphere is no longer just an external presence. It has become a psychological partner in the story of resilience and hope. The challenge is great, but so is the capacity to meet it. The sky above may be shifting, but it still offers what it always has, a reminder of vastness, of continuity, and of the human ability to find meaning beneath its changing face. From the first warmth of sunlight on the skin to the hush of snowfall that silences a city, weather has always been more than the backdrop of human life. It is not just atmosphere in the scientific sense, but atmosphere of the mind, a companion to thought, feeling, and memory. The skies overhead influence not only crops and calendars, but moods, stories, and the rhythm of daily existence. To reflect on weather is to reflect on humanity itself, because the clouds and winds outside are never far from the climates within. Sunshine, with its golden clarity, reminds us of energy, hope, and openness. Its brightness lifts the brain's chemistry and lightens the heart, encouraging optimism and sociability. Yet even the most dazzling sun has its limits, for too much heat overwhelms and drains. Sunshine is both a gift and a lesson. Joy flourishes when balanced, and even abundance requires moderation. The long summers that inspire festivals and laughter are also the seasons that teach the importance of shade, patience, and rest. Rain, with its gentle rhythms, carries a quieter influence. The sound of drops on glass, the earthy scent of petrichor rising from the ground, the soft dimming of light, all these weave a backdrop for reflection. Rain is nature's lullaby, calming the mind and masking distractions. It is also a muse, sparking creativity, poetry, and song, offering comfort in its predictability. Yet rain also reminds us of melancholy, of longing and memory. In its dual role as cleanser and burden, it shows how emotion itself is layered, capable of soothing and stirring in the same moment. Storms are the sky's great dramas, filling the air with awe and adrenaline. Lightning and thunder, sudden and unignorable, awaken something ancient within us. The instinct to fear, but also the instinct to marvel. For some, storms are threats to be weathered. For others, they are spectacles to be chased. They embody release and renewal, breaking tension and clearing the air. Psychologically, storms mirror our own tempests, bursts of anger or passion followed by the relief of calm. They remind us that chaos and peace are partners, and that upheaval often precedes clarity. The seasons, too, write themselves deeply into the psyche. Spring carries the symbolism of renewal, each blossom a quiet promise of second chances. Summer is abundance and vitality, the season of long days and outward joy. Autumn encourages reflection, gathering in both harvest and wisdom, marking endings with beauty. Winter draws us inward, into rest, coziness, and intimacy, its darkness softened by light and ritual. These cycles are more than shifts in temperature or daylight. They are metaphors for the cycle of life itself, mapping youth, maturity, and rest onto the turning year. In this rhythm, people find not only comfort but meaning, a reassurance that change is natural and that every ending holds the seed of beginning. Weather has also been a mirror for human identity. Cultures have shaped themselves around their skies, finding coziness in the north, openness in the Mediterranean, resilience in deserts. Myths and rituals gave the sun, rain, and storms divine faces, while art and literature filled canvases and pages with skies that mirrored human moods. In language, too, the bond is clear. To be bright, cloudy, stormy, or under the weather is to admit that the self and the sky are never separate. Weather provides a universal vocabulary for feelings, proof that the outer climate and the inner climate have always been in conversation. In the future, this bond continues, though it carries new challenges. Climate change reshapes the relationship between people and the sky, introducing anxiety, grief, and urgency. Yet even here, resilience and creativity emerge, as they always have. The weather remains a teacher, sometimes harsh, sometimes gentle, but always a reminder that humans are part of something larger. The eternal presence of the sky endures, even as its patterns shift. Looking upward will always inspire both caution and wonder, fear and hope. Perhaps this is the greatest gift weather gives: perspective. Sunshine invites joy, rain invites thought, storms invite awe, and seasons invite meaning. Together, they shape not just the landscape of the earth but the landscape of the human heart. Weather is not simply endured or enjoyed, it is lived within, woven into memory and imagination, inseparable from identity. And so, as this journey comes to a close, it may be comforting to step back and breathe with the rhythm of the skies. Beyond the window, clouds still gather and drift, winds still change, and stars still appear with the setting of the sun. The weather will continue its eternal cycle, just as it always has, writing its moods across both the world and the mind. Rest then with the reassurance that tomorrow will bring its own sky, perhaps bright, perhaps grey, but always turning, always renewing. The atmosphere is vast, but it is also intimate, wrapping every person in its shifting embrace. Sleep can come gently under this knowledge, that while storms pass and seasons change, the sky's rhythm endures, carrying humanity with it in quiet constancy.